Well, hello, everybody. So nice to be with you again, as always. Happy holidays. I hope everything is coming along nicely with your holiday plans. So I'm uploading a video today. This is actually a conversation that I had a few days ago on a channel called it's called Finding Gnosis. And actually, I think I put that in the description. I need to fix that because I put digital gnosis. I confused it with somebody else. So in the description, I'll have to actually fix that on the later on. So I apologize for the confusion. The channel that I was on is called Finding Gnosis, and he hosts open discussions. He seems like a really, really nice guy, and I really like the way he does his platform. I just recently found him. So I was listening in on a discussion that some people were having, and they were talking about reincarnation, which is something that I find to be actually quite fascinating. As far as the subject goes, as many of you know, I've studied world religions quite a bit, actually. Over the past 30 years, I've spent a lot of time studying various different religious beliefs. And I do find the Eastern religions to be probably the most inspirational, to be honest with you. I know living in America, we have a lot of exposure to Christianity in particular, but the Abrahamic faiths in general get a lot of attention. There's about 4 billion Christians, Muslims, and Jews collectively on the planet. So they take up about half the world's population just with those three religions. So they do get quite a bit of attention. But I find the Eastern religions to actually be a little bit more interesting. I think that the concept of karma and reincarnation is significantly more just than the concept of like going to hell or heaven or something like that. It literally makes no sense. But reincarnation, karma, I'm not saying I believe in those things, of course, but as far as justice goes, you really, if that is true, right? If we do get karma for our good choices or bad choices, if we do reincarnate, then we really, we get what we deserve at that point. If you're living a good life, well, you deserve that good life. If you're living a bad life, well, you would deserve that bad life. So again, I'm not saying this is true, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of just give you a clip. This runs about an hour and a half, and I'd like to see if you guys interact with the comments, see what you think about this. Let's see. I've been working on trying to get my technical stuff up. That looks really good. Let's go ahead and play this.
Yeah, no, it's very.
Can I just say, no, guys, want to welcome Objective Ethics to the show. Guys, feel free to interject, talk, say whatever it is you want to say to the world whenever you want. I'm just having to do something here in the background, so I won't be able to come on for a little while. But I will let people in and out. But once you're on, feel free to interject as and when you want. Feel free to meander, change the topic of conversation. But hopefully you will give each other a chance to speak. Don't talk over each other. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Except for DW. Speak over him only.
But what's happened to Joseph? Because I was telling him about my take on.
Who's Objective? Say hello. And what brought you to the chat today?
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the kind greeting. Yeah, I just recently found this channel. I find it to be quite fascinating. I recently started my own channel on YouTube, trying to get people to come together to have polite conversations about things they might disagree with. And I just find that the way that you guys are doing things here is really, really interesting. And I'm really, really impressed. But you guys were talking about something that really caught my attention. And I just had a couple of clarifying questions, if you don't mind me asking.
No, I mean, that's why you're here. Go ahead, ask. We have someone else coming onto the show, though. Hold that. I just want to say hi to Black Man is Fair, but Objective Ethics was about to ask a question.
Okay, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So first of all, I'm an agnostic. So some of the stuff you're talking about seems pretty far out there to me, but I'm definitely not going to tell you that you're wrong, because as far as I know, there's a 50-50 chance what you guys are saying could be right. And so I just kind of curious, because I do, even though I'm an agnostic, I believe in objective morality. And in my studies on ethics and morality and philosophy, the idea of the soul has been coming up quite a bit. And when you study, like virtue ethics, the idea of our decisions being essentially like a record of our decisions and our interactions with people kind of gets marked down into your soul, or recorded on the soul, or maybe a better way of putting it. And I'm not saying I necessarily believe this, but it is a very interesting thought. And if that's true, then the purpose of life would be basically to learn to live a virtuous life. And then it brings reincarnation into the picture, because it's impossible for a person in just one lifetime to learn how to live a perfectly virtuous life. So it would require reincarnation, coming back and continuing to learn to develop the virtues. And I'm just curious as to what you guys might think about that.
Well,
I think it aligns with Hindu teachings, but I'm going to let Chickpea talk.
well, virtuous life. I think to live a virtuous life, speak for myself, is literally impossible. Speak for myself, I think, because life on this planet is so brutal and hard, it's almost impossible to be totally virtuous, in my opinion. That's what I think. But then I don't have a good word to say for this planet anymore, and I don't have one. I don't have one. But I don't think it's possible to lead a virtuous life on this planet by simple virtue of the fact, because when we're born, you do know, don't you, that when we're born, our first 3 years of life are totally dependent on our updragging with our parents. And so anything you learn in that 3 years is completely wiped out. You can't go to hypnotists and crawl it back. You can't deal with it. It's there. It's ingrained in your DNA, in your whole being. So I can't see how one could be 100% virtuous if one hasn't got 100% access to one's entire psyche. That's just my opinion.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for sharing that, sister. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I think to live a perfectly virtuous life would be extremely difficult, if not impossible. I'd have to agree with you there. The virtues, I mean, there's not, when I'm talking about virtues, obviously wisdom would be considered the fundamental virtue. And then every other virtue that can be attained, we might look to like Aristotelian concepts for the golden mean. And that's how we understand what the virtues are. So like the virtue of courage, for example, is that perfect place in between recklessness and fear. This is how we attain courage. So there's like a golden mean to every moral action. And I do agree with you that to live a perfectly virtuous life would be extremely difficult if we were starting out that way. That was the goal to begin with. But by the end of a lifetime, I'm wondering, after living many, many lifetimes, because we do have a predisposition. I do discussions on my channel. I'm getting ready to do a video about free will, for example, and what you said about the first 3 years of your life. I think you said 3 years, not 3 months, right? 3 years.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so you're absolutely right that we do seem to be a product of our environment.
Yeah.
But if reincarnation, and again, I'm saying if, I'm not saying I necessarily believe this is true, but it is very fascinating for me to mull over. If reincarnation was a thing, then the energy, or lack of better word, I don't know what you guys call it. I should ask you, is it a form of energy that your soul continues on, or is there any kind of like substance that we might be able to point our finger at and call it? Because it's obviously not matter, right? It's not physical matter.
The soul's not matter. The soul is just like our brains, our thoughts, and our sight, and our soul exists outside the physical body. I know that to be so because I've out of body, so I know that is to be so. But another thing, objective ethics, about being virtuous, it is impossible, because I don't know if you know this or not, but if you pay someone to carry out an act on your behalf, that is tantamount to carrying out that act yourself. You do know that, yeah?
I would agree to a certain degree that there's a certain degree of responsibility.
Even the law, our corrupt legal system recognizes that. So how can we live in a world where children are exploited in places like the Gambia and the Congo and everything to bring us our cheap phones? And let's not forget the 92 billion animals in the factory farms and slaughterhouses that we just gorge our way through. Now, if you pay someone, if you buy those goods, you're as guilty as the person selling them or carrying out the act. And that is legally even recognized. So
they should let people hunt again, then, to get their meat. We should let people hunt again to get meat or something. But I don't think we can, always get into veganism. So I was going to, more talk about their
I'm a vegan, so I bring this subject up.
That's a great subject, but I think we've kind of, beat that dead horse a few times.
No. Well, not for me. He asked me. No, I'm just saying. Okay, right.
We ground it up, and it's in the kibble now, and we feed it to the cats because you have cats. We already had that. We were going around
I'm
the
just
circle.
as guilty as the worst. I think, but all
there
right.
you
If
go.
you buy your mobile phone, when you buy a mobile phone, those minerals have been dug up by children 5, 6 years old in the Congo. It's slavery. So when we buy anything, we are just as guilty as the person forcing that upon those children. And that's a sad, brutal reality about life on this planet.
Well, they have that old depiction of one of the angels weighing a feather or whatever it is, and it comes from the ancient Egyptian is the Mot God is the scale thing where they measure your soul against the feather, and that's like you give up everything on this earth when you go on, and that's what gets you to the the better afterlife that doesn't bring you back here. I think where there's a land in between where there is something they've built themselves or they know about in their afterlife, and that's what they got all the boats and the costumes for.
Yeah, I don't know. I would just say, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, sister. Yeah, brother, you're touching on actually one of my favorite religious traditions. Even though I'm not a religious person myself, I'm not an anti-theist at all. In fact, we do discussions on my channel about religion sometimes. And in Egyptian mythology, just like you're saying, your heart, actually not your soul, but your heart technically is weighed against the Mot's feather, and Mot's feather represents truth and justice. If your heart balances with truth and justice, then you're allowed to go on to the afterlife. Otherwise, you're actually destroyed forever. But that's a beautiful idea because it gives accountability for your actions as opposed to simply your beliefs, which I think is where the Abrahamic faiths really fall flat, in my opinion. Just believing in the right God gets you into heaven. Your actions and virtues don't really seem to play as much of a role. So I think that's yeah, I really like that Egyptian.
Yeah, I'm religious. I'm semi-religious, not super religious, but I'm more spiritual, meaning I believe a personal relation with what I found through books, through knowledge. It's a personal relation, and I've got some of that information through books and knowledge, but a lot of that is very personal. It's how I felt, about God or religion or the universe affects me, and I don't need to take anyone's word for it. I just felt it, and it's like I did read some of the Bible. I do read a lot of religious other books. I have been to temples and whatnot, but I'm not any specific religion exactly.
And you mentioned, I think and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I thought I heard you mention something about the Bhagavad Gita. So if that's true, you're obviously familiar with some of the Vedic scriptures and stuff, and if that's the case, I think there's a lot of beautiful stuff in there as well. I mean, I do think the reason I'm not an anti-theist, I mean, I don't want to derail this conversation into religion, but since we're talking about this particularly, the reason I'm not an anti-theist is because I see there's a particular value for a lot of people in holding on to certain religious beliefs. I know people who got off of drugs and alcohol because of their beliefs in a God. I know people who have overcome personal trauma because of their beliefs in a particular religious system or God. And, we know that religious organizations are responsible for like 80, maybe even 85% of all the humanitarian aid when it comes to worldwide, so, I mean, there's a lot of good things you could say about religion. I don't buy into the stories because I think there's just too much lack of evidence. And there's too many stories that they claim to be true that we know for a fact weren't, at least in this world. Like there was no global flood, for example, I could go on and on, but I do think there is a lot of beautiful things that you could glean from religious beliefs.
Why don't you believe in the global flood? Have you ever flown the Sahara Desert?
I haven't flown the Sahara Desert, but I don't know if you can see my profile picture or not, but I'm riding a kayak, an innovative kayak stand-up paddleboard. I'm actually a boat manufacturer, and I invented a new type of hull. I've got 2 patents. I'm licensed by the U.S. Coast Guard to build boats. So not only have I studied geology and biology and there's a number of different fields of science that have debunked the flood myth. But as a boat manufacturer myself, I know for a fact there was no wooden boat that held a bunch of animals, food and fresh water for a year and kept everybody alive. So you could talk about an allegorical flood or maybe something like a local flood. And having studied religion formally in college and undergraduate and also at Bible seminary, I know that story was gleaned. The Noah's flood story was gleaned from the Enuma Elish, and we can,
exactly. Or something is the guy's name. It's like Usha Sheps or something. Yeah, the guy that built the round boat.
Yep, exactly. Utnapishtim, some people say. Exactly right. So anyway, so there may have been some kind of local flooding. I have no doubt about that. If you look at the Mesopotamia, the land between the two rivers, this was a flood plain. This is where these flood narratives started. It flooded every year. In fact, they needed that flood. The Sumerians, all the way through the Egyptians, they needed that floodplain in order to develop to re-fertilize the soil that they were using to build their, to plant their crops. So the floods were a major part of that society, and so it makes sense that they would have these flood stories. But as far as a global flood, there's just too much evidence against it. So I mean, I could go on about like I said, the geological strata layers. I could go on about the fossil records and all these other things. But just as a boat manufacturer, I know for a fact, I don't have to rely on other people's information. I know boats and I know boat building, and I know there was no massive wooden boat in particular, that survived this crazy world global flood and stored animals and fresh water and food.
Yeah.
I just know for that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, it didn't happen, obviously. But if you fly over the Sahara, you can see where the sea was once. You could the waves, the formations of waves. When you fly over, you can actually see the formation still. It's weird. So, yes, I don't want to say.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak. Make it seem like I'm speaking about something I don't know, because I'll be honest, I have not flown over the Sahara Desert. I do know that most of the land masses that we are looking at were previously underwater at one point. This is another way we know the flood didn't happen globally, because the tectonic plate movement is what created the mountains that we have right now. And some of the biblical literalists or flood proponents will say, well, there's fossils, there's these sea creature fossils up on the tops of the mountains. It's like, yeah, because those mountains were underwater when those animals were fossilized. That's, so it's, it makes perfect sense. But I don't know about the Sahara Desert. It seems to me, I don't know. And I just, as a friendly pushback, isn't this, are you talking about the design, so to speak, the geometric shapes of the way the sand?
The way the sand, when you look down on it from a plane, the way the sand is formed, is like flying over the sea, except, of course, it's not the sea because it's golden color, but you can actually see that once there would have been water there. You can actually see it. And I've lived in the Middle East, and I lived in Yemen for quite a while, and way inland in Yemen, you used to find shells everywhere where the sea had been right inside the country. Weird. Sorry, I don't travel a lot now, Jen. So
they say the Nile used to run east-west, but that was, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of years ago. I'm not an expert on that. And then civilization, you don't have long ones without having some flood water or something to manipulate the soil, because you can't keep farming the same soil. That's why most early civilizations kept moving around, because they were over farming their own soil until they found floodplains.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's a good point. The geography has changed so much because, this planet is 4.5 billion years old, right? And so these land masses have had a lot of time. Once the land masses actually finally formed, because clearly it took a long time for that to happen, initially with the accretion and stuff forming the planet, then you have to form the land masses, then you've got to bring the water to the planet. I think the asteroids is the most widely accepted. So there's a lot of development that happens, but at some point then these land masses are forming. I believe they had the Pangea concept where it was a supercontinent and then it broke up in different pieces and stuff. So there was a lot of movement and a lot of change over, even 1,000 years is a long time, but when you start getting into hundreds of thousands, millions of years, then you start getting into billions of years, so much has changed. But my question, and I apologize because I feel like I kind of derailed from the what you guys were talking about, and I was really interested in hearing, and you did kind of touch on the one question I had when I was asking if this soul or this spirit that we basically goes on after we die, is this some type of an energy, right? You mentioned something like transcendental concepts, which I'm not a materialist, I'm a naturalist. So I actually do believe that there are transcendental properties in the natural universe. I think when we look at qualia, like, qualia, obviously, you guys seem very intelligent, I'm sure but just for the audience, what does it feel like to sit next to a warm fire? The qualia of something. It's not just the heat that the fire produces. There's this emotional, this internal feeling, the redness of red, type of a thing. You know what I mean? So at any rate, I was just curious, is this a type of transcendental thing? Would you consider this to be a type of energy ultimately, or like something that could be considered physical, even though it's not mass, like electromagnetic energy or massless particles or something of that nature. I just want to take a quick second to reiterate this. I'm replaying this video as I was a member of this panel. This is for educational purposes only. I don't know anything about how fair use and stuff like that works on YouTube. So since I was a panel member and I have a good relationship thus far with the owner of this channel, and I am promoting his channel, I did leave a link in the description for the Finding Gnosis channel. So I would definitely recommend you guys support his efforts. And thank you very much. I'll just go ahead and let this play.
I mean, I think so. I think Thoth, the speed of thought, are all connected. So it's like the Egyptian, Thoth, and then the ancient Greeks had, Hermes and stuff like that. So it's just like, to me, it was, transference of thought and receiving things is its own science. So we just haven't sorted out yet. And I think what we translate as angels talking to people has always been happening, and it wasn't always the same angels that we, ordained in the Bible. So who was it? So that's what, has me thinking things are a way bigger spectrum than one religion, is when these things are prevalent before the religions that people were talking to, quote unquote, angels.
That does make a lot of sense. I agree with you to a certain degree. And my feeling about religion is if one of them is true, or at least has an element of truth to it, then they all have to have an element of truth to it. I don't think any one of these stories I've ever heard about, and I've studied quite a few religions over the last 30 years, and I don't think any one single religion has the answers. But when the sister mentioned something about coming back to this world and how it would be impossible to live a virtuous life in this existence, I think, there's a lot to be said for that, because, how the environment does shape so much of our decision-making processes. And again, when you get into the free will concept, but what if, this universe is so massive, and let's just set aside the fact that there might be multiverses, or, I'm not pushing that narrative, but there is a possibility there might even be multiple universes. But even just this universe that we're in right now, we haven't even explored, like, I don't think 1% of the entire universe. It is so massive. So if we're coming back into different reincarnations, would it be possible if we strive for virtue, let's say we die and we have attained a really complete understanding of even one of the virtues, right? When we come back to our next life, is it possible that we could be born on a planet that's completely on the other side of the universe, where the environment is more predestined to, be aligned with those more virtuous lives? It's not this particular planet.
You're in a different time. Yeah, or you're differently in time. I think you can reincarnate in the past. It's not linear.
Story.
Well, I agree with you, brother, because I actually believe in B theory of time. I don't know if you're familiar with that, A theory versus B theory. Again, I guess just for the audience. So A theory of time is what most of us tend to think of, that the past is inaccessible, the future hasn't happened yet, all we have is this moment right now. But B theory of time states that the past, present, and future are all in existence concurrently. We're just observing a particular moment in time. And I do think that's true. I think there's a lot of evidence in physics, and I could go into the whole B theory of time. That's a conversation for another time, maybe. But if anybody wants to talk about that, it's a fascinating thing. Maybe check out my channel. I'm going to do a video on that in the near future as well. But if we do say that, let's just accept for the sake of argument that the B theory of time is correct, then your example of reincarnating into the past is perfectly reasonable. And this B theory of time, keep in mind, it does not violate any of the laws of physics. So a lot of people think like entropy and evolution and stuff, it would negate a B theory of time theory, but it doesn't actually. It works within all of that, because we're simply demarcating particular moments in a fabric of time. We're not saying that they can't, that the past, present, or future cannot all exist simultaneously. It does not refute, one does not refute the other. So if we did reincarnate into the past, not only could we do it in the past, but could we also do it, relocate when we come back into another life?
A horror story. That sounds vile. That's really that's really depressing to hear. Because you know what gets me about life is, okay, now I know for a fact that we can exist outside our meat bags. Now, I know that for a fact. So why are we forced into meat bags? Because this planet is just dog eat dog till we
It was
drink.
needed for something. It's a cycle for a form that
it's a
doesn't
fact.
need the meat
It's a
bag,
fact.
though.
Well, actually, Zachariah Sitchin, I think there might be truth in what he says, that we are actually some kind of slave race that were being trapped inside these meat bags to dig for gold or whatever. I don't know, because we can exist outside, and I know so because I've done it. So you're trapped inside a meat bag in a world that is dog eat dog, from the tiniest organism, to the biggest creatures, and it's all killing.
Whoa, boys, got a little hot there.
What?
Nothing. Continue. I was saying got hot about the organism.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. Even the tiniest, it's all dog eat dog, killing, from the tiniest little thing to the king of the jungle, and it's all killing. When in fact we can exist outside the meat bag. We could, in theory, just exist in the light of the sun. We don't need a body. And I know so because I've had out-of-body experience, so I know it. We don't need.
Yeah, I took enough synthetic liquid mescaline, and I had a really long, uncomfortable out-of-body experience.
I loved it, and I didn't want to come back in. I don't want to be in meat bags. I hate this damn thing. Wait till you get older, organic, and it starts becoming arthritic. You experience nothing yet. Nothing.
Then I had a few controlled environment ones that were much more humble, but also very cool and interesting. And there's it's called galantamine. It's you don't need a prescription. It's called galantamine. It's from the snowdrop flower.
Yeah.
And it really helps if you can get to that meditative state to have a out-of-body experience. Like if you lay in bed but just can't sleep, that's it. When you swear you don't know if you're asleep or not, that is the state you need. And they try to get that in meditation, but you can achieve it naturally if you're one of those people that you don't know if you're quite asleep sometimes when you lay in bed. Like you felt like you've been laying there for a long time, but you don't know when time has passed. That's the state you need to get into that right meditation to have the out-of-body that I noticed on the snowdrop.
Yeah.
I'm going to dial out and let anybody else talk.
Mine was under surgery. I came out and they were pottering around my body, and I came out just wandered, just floated around the room. But my brain was still functioning, and I could still see, and my soul was with me. So but I just find people talk about leading the perfect life on this planet Earth. I don't think it's possible because it's been designed. It's a murderous place, in my opinion. Absolutely murderous. Animals murdering each other, us murdering animals, us murdering each other. There's just no bloody end to it. We've just seen 80 good years. And I think they're coming to an end, personally. I believe there's going to be World War III soon. Can't wait. And then the Archons are going to have a lovely big loose party on our misery. That's what I believe. Do you like the sound of that?
It sounds delightful. Are there going to be hors d'oeuvres, or should I order pizza?
No, you're going to be part of the loose. You are the loose. Us humans are the loose.
I'll save a couple coin for some pizza for everybody, okay? Everybody in the chat, we're getting pizza when this happens. We're getting down in the bunker, and we're just watching it shake for a little while. We'll pop up for all the smoke and rubble. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. The do-over will be better.
You don't believe that the Archons feast on our misery, then? You don't believe that?
No. I think humanity, like when you see how people act after a storm, I think people can come to friggin' together. People do get heated over certain things in politics and stuff, but if it's not political and it's a natural disaster, people come together quickly. And I think people cannot be divided over war because of that, meaning they can't, in Western communities, they can't fight each other and then go home and be neighbors and not care for each other's injuries as well. So there's an issue there with having civil unrest in our countries.
Yeah, I just want to respond to this comment really quick. Sorry, I had to take a phone call while this was playing. But no, Chris, there actually are some really interesting models about reincarnation. They're not all the same. And it's just easier to explain this rather than type it. But there are some models in which we actually make the decision ourselves as to whether or not we want to reanimate, so to speak. So it's not something that's just you're in this perpetual cycle without any choices. There are some models in which we reincarnate up to a certain point until we reach the state of nirvana. And then so you kind of have this target goal, and you can continue to you must reincarnate up to a certain point, because you cannot be in a state of nirvana until you've reached an understanding. And there's this whole theology behind it. This is kind of Buddhism. There's other models where you're essentially part of this one consciousness, more like in Taoism. And once you attain truth, then you're part of the universe itself. So you're not actually reincarnated beyond that point. And there are some models where you're just constantly coming back, because you're basically like the universe trying to express itself and trying to discover itself. So there's just so many different models out there when it comes to reincarnation. And again, I'm not promoting any of this stuff. I think it's fascinating stuff. I love studying it. And this conversation we had here was really interesting to hear people's beliefs who actually do believe in a type of reincarnation. What was interesting, and what I gathered from these people I'm talking with, and you'll see as this show goes on, and again, I just want to plug this channel, Finding Gnosis. I've got a link in the description, so check out the full video, interact with his channel, subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. And if you do go on to any of his panels, please let him know that Objective Ethics sent you over there. Really appreciate that. I'm trying to support his efforts. He's been really kind to me, very generous, letting me jump onto his panels and stuff. So, but at any rate, as far as these people go, I don't think either of these people are presenting a theistic type of reincarnation. So we'll get more into that as the video goes on.
That our people, like, they also take care of the disaster issues in their neighborhoods. So we can't divide neighborhoods, because these people will be taking care of each other's injured. And that doesn't make sense for politics. So we have an issue with ever having a full civil thing. So they just have to say trigger words on certain shows to get people to go over the edge.
Oh, sorry, Robert, I missed your question here. I think I took that phone call. We just filmed some fitness videos. I don't know if one of the things I want to do with this channel, it's really diverse, but I want to work on mental health and physical health. A lot of you guys who know me know that I went through some really, really serious medical problems. Almost 2 years, I was stuck on my couch. And I have been a fitness buff my whole life. I've been very athletic, played a lot of sports, martial arts, things of this nature. My whole life, I've been into this kind of stuff. And so when I went down, I dropped about almost 75 pounds of solid muscle in about 3 weeks. And I ended up in the emergency room, and it was just this long process, lots of surgeries, lots of time spent in the hospital. I think my longest stay was almost 2 months at one point. And it was really serious. I suffered a lot of depression because I couldn't even get off my couch. My wife, she has a really good job at the hospital, but she's in management. It's a very stressful job. And normally we would split, I take a lot of the burden of house chores, because after selling my last business, I basically was essentially semi-retired. So I took on a lot of house chores, worked part-time with a nonprofit agency trying to support homeless people. But there's not a lot of money in that. But I had so much money in the bank, I wasn't really working for the money, just doing something I believed in. And I would take care of the house chores. I would cook, do all that kind of stuff. So my wife, she'd just come home from work and just relax. Well, then I got sick, and fuck, man, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even get off the couch. It was really bad. And so she would come home from work, and then she would cook, she would clean, she did everything. She literally, if it wasn't for her, I just can't even imagine. So at any rate, now I'm finally healthy enough, had my final surgery a couple months ago, and I'm back into the gym now. So I have worked as a personal trainer. I've worked with athletes. I've also helped people who wanted to lose weight. And so I thought I would kind of take you guys on my journey with that. And so I filmed some fitness videos today. I'm a little worn out, but I wanted to get this video up as well. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I had to take a phone call from one of the camera crew that was over here today for that fitness video. So I apologize about that, but I missed this question from Robin, and this is really an important one. Let me see. Can I highlight these? How did I do that before? Oh, there we go. Okay. So it says, but we do not retain knowledge from each incarnation. So how does that help us? So according to all the reincarnation models that I've heard, and even the non-theistic ones, what happens is basically your virtuous decisions and non-virtuous decisions, your moral and immoral actions, they essentially get recorded into, I guess, what would be considered your soul. And so you don't have an active memory of these things. However, what this does is it creates a subconscious or a predisposition for certain behaviors, right? And so we know that because there's no free will, let's just take reincarnation and set it aside for a second. Because there's no free will, we know that we are a product of our environment. right? And so we are predisposed to so many things that happen within our minds subconsciously. So by the time we are actually making what we feel is a conscious decision or a willful choice, our subconscious mind has already essentially processed so much information that it has subconsciously formed the decision that we're going to make. So we could not have really made any other decision that the decision we made. So I'll be doing more videos as time goes on about free will, because it's a fascinating thing to talk about, because we do think that we are out there making our own choices. But it turns out, if you actually study the science and the psychology behind it, the neurology behind it, that free will is an illusion. There is something that is called conscious will or conscious decision making, but it is not free will. As soon as you put free into that sentence, free will to that, right, it becomes something that is just an illusion. So at any rate, so this predisposition, this is how the reincarnation would work, right? So let's say you've attained some of the virtues, like wisdom would be a fundamental one, right? So you attain wisdom, maybe you're a very fair person, okay, but you lack courage. So when you reincarnate, if according to this model, and again, I want to make it clear that I'm not promoting this stuff as far as truth, okay? So it's just very interesting stuff to study. But according to this model, when you reincarnate, you would have the predisposition of wisdom and fairness, and you would still need to work on attaining courage, because you've already attained those other two. So as you reincarnate, it's already kind of, I don't want to say, I guess imprinted on your soul might be a way to describe it. And I probably don't have the right vernacular for that, because it's not a belief that I hold. But we'll discuss a little bit more of this as this video goes on. But that's a great question, Robin, because that's really crucial, because a lot of people think, well, if we reincarnate, how come we don't have access to past lives? There are some religious models that actually think you can tap into past lives. In fact, I think one of the guests on this panel, the sister Chickpea, I think is her name. That's cute. I think she actually was talking about maybe not memories that she had access from a past life, but a skill set. And you'll see more of that as this video goes on.
To cause a chain reaction with someone does something with the boomstick, and then we have the news stories.
I tell you, Organic, us humans got a horrible. Do you know the story of the Battle of Somme? What actually happened, as opposed to what you read in the history books?
Do we have someone back on the show? Hello?
There's Joseph back.
Joseph?
Yeah, I'm back, guys. I had to run into a store. I'm going to have a visit with my mother today, so I had to run into a store.
Did you steal us any liquor? We like the good stuff.
No, I don't. Not really a drinker anymore. Kind of gave that up.
Somebody in the
Stay
chat
healthy.
might be. Somebody in the chat might be. I don't imbibe very often, unless I'm hanging out at the strip club.
So you're Jewish, Joseph?
Loosen up a little bit.
No, it's just the name. It's no.
Jewish name, yeah.
No, it's my great grandfather married a Scottish English, and that's it. And then the name just.
Oh wow.
But no other Jews in the bloodline besides my great grandfather.
All right.
But
it has to be on your mother's side. I'm sorry. You don't get to go to the mutual sniggle.
Right. Yeah. So nothing at all on my mother's side. But Chickpea, you did bring up the loosh, and I think one reason I think all that Robert Monroe and his institute could be a psyop is because he tries to justify why loosh is necessary. And
why is it to justify it?
Yeah, well, he says that's what the universe runs off of, or this realm.
Yes.
You know, I'm not going to go into detail. I don't have much time.
It's what the Gnostics believe. Yes.
But he tries to justify that it is for some kind of reason that we just can't understand, and it just has to be done. And he, I believe in one of his books, in one of the chapters that I mentioned, that Jordan Crowder on YouTube's been reading, is he goes, "Oh, I finally understand why it's necessary." So a lot of people think maybe it's a psyop to get us to be like, well, yeah, you know, there is this loosh thing, but I guess it's kind of necessary, and we just don't understand it until maybe we get to the astral, or we get, you know, here in this realm, we just don't get it. So that's another reason why I think some of these new agey people like Robert Monroe and Tom Campbell could possibly be Decepticon kind of psyops. I'm not saying for sure.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting comment here. Skeptic Philosophy, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much, by the way, everyone who's jumping in and just supporting the channel. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So Skeptic Philosophy, he mentioned free choice kind of works. It just has to go along with the notion that your choices is not bound to outside things. And for some reason that can't, let me hide this. It's in the way of the words. Oh, there we go. Not bound to outside things at the time of the choice. So one of the ways that we can kind of address this free will concept, because I know it does seem strange, we really feel like we are making all of our decisions. But think of it this way. So, excuse me. Excuse me. I almost choked on my own saliva there. I didn't know that was even possible. At any rate, I'm drowning myself over here. So our senses work in a different time scale, right? The sense of touch, the sense of sight, the sense of taste, the sense of smell, hearing, all of our senses actually work in different times. What happens is, as we're eating a meal or walking down the street or watching a movie, reading a book, our body is taking in information, right? It's going to the brain. And what the brain does is it actually collects all this information and it consolidates it into one signal, I guess, and it sends it to the conscious part of the brain. Okay, so we think things are happening concurrently. Everything is all happening at the exact same time, right? But it's really not. It's actually coming in at different times. But our subconscious mind, without us being aware of it whatsoever, is collecting different pieces of information at different times, putting it together, and then giving it to us as a conscious thought. So when we actually interact with the world, we feel like this is all just happening at the same time. I'm moving my arms right now. My mouth is moving. Words are coming out. My eyes, everything is happening at the exact same time consciously to me. But in reality, it's actually not. And so when you think about this analogy, right, and we go back to start thinking about free will, all of these different things that from our environment is processed, information that gets processed into our subconscious mind. This is all reaction of electrochemical processes that happen in the brain with the neurons firing, right? And with that is basically a result of our environment and predispositions and pre-existing things that we had absolutely no control over. And when we think about how many things in our lives got us to this point right here that we had literally no control over, and you can go all the way back to, like, let's say 65 million years ago. I think I mentioned that in this video actually, where this asteroid crashes into the Yucatan Peninsula, right? If that doesn't happen, we're not here. And we obviously had no control of that. There weren't even Homo erectus or Homo sapiens on the planet, right? It's just small mammals at that point. Evolution had to take over from there. So we can go back as far as we want to realize there's so many things that had to come into play. When you think about even being born, right? Your mother and father had to meet, for one thing, right? Then how many different individual sperms are there? There's like several 100,000 individual sperms. There's tens of thousands of eggs. The right combination had to come together. All these things that are completely out of your control. There's an entire environment that happens when you are in your mother's womb, when you go from a zygote to becoming a fetus, right? There's so many things that based on what your mother eats, the kind of music, the audible things that she's taking, her own stress levels, so many different things, her own chemical that balance and imbalance is happening in her body that actually is feeding information into you. You have absolutely no conscious awareness of any of this. So you could go on and on and on with all these different examples. And I think we will discuss free will, but there's a good argument to be made for the lack of free will. Even though it feels like we do have this, we feel like we're making all of our choices, our decision-making process is at best very limited.
But I think it's a deeper discussion that needs to be had.
Yeah. But I find it all very scary, I must admit. I mean, shall I tell you something, Joseph? Every night if I go to sleep,
I don't think it's a psyop, but that's just a wild guess. But I think most things are, meaning how media is set up, how the news stories are set up. They only feed us what they want us to consume to brainwash us in general. So if it's out there in mainstream feed, it's usually bad for you, just like fast food. So it's just like if you had to go out and seek it, like the Robert Monroe stuff, I would think it's a little more tasteful. But that's as much as I'll say, I think.
As I was saying, Joseph, every night if I go to sleep, I fantasize about going into the dark. You know that the Gnostics, because I believe in Gnosticism, and Gnostics talk about the tunnel of light. Go down the tunnel of light and basically end up being reincarnated. Because I don't want another little stint on this planet. I've had it. And I have to every night, and it's terrifying, because I am terrified. Terrified of going into something I don't even know yet. Because I really do believe it. I'm not the only one.
Maybe DNW, I think Chickpea needs to do some 5-MeO DMT, or ayahuasca, you have all the purging and kind of not fun stuff, but maybe some of that 5-MeO DMT could kind of give you some insights.
What's that?
Frog venom.
Well,
it's a special crystal that can take you to another dimension and show you, what places look like without your body, kind of.
Oh yeah,
but see, I've done the regular DMT, guys, and it's cool, but I don't think it's that amazing. But I've heard the MEO, the other kind of DMT that's a little harder to find, is more transformational. Even Mike Tyson, Chickpea, just put in Mike Tyson DMT in YouTube, and you'll see him. I mean, if it could help him, he was all screwed up and abused, and you can imagine his life. It could be, and it's a quick trip. It's only 10 to 12 minutes.
No purging. Trying to get a buzz off of it. We don't get none that last hit.
But I'll tell you something. Here in the UK, here in the UK, it's very, very hard. I don't know where people get their drugs from. It's a mystery to me. Absolute mystery.
Maybe you'll have to go to Bali. Take a little vacation, go there, or something like that.
I thought I was going to say something like that. Yes.
Or maybe
wherever the fish band likes play. If it sounds like the band is like a jam band, find out where the jam bands are. Okay, go out to where the people are like hanging out near the buses. Their hair will be dreaded, many colors. They'll be wearing loose clothes. They'll be frying food that is vegetarian, and be like, "You got any Deemsters?"
Oh, what about the Dutch, the Amsterdam? I'm sure you can get it there.
I come from Holland. Yeah, that's where I come from. I come from Rotterdam, though. Yeah, it's mostly just you can get drugs, but it's mostly just marijuana and stuff for smoking. I don't know much about the drug. I've never actually taken drugs, I have to admit. I've never done
They smell like patchouli, have a lot of dreads, and they listen to jam bands.
But what's better about
They probably have a pet cactus with a name.
I would say that my experience, that I've done both, when I was younger, I took a lot of drugs, and as I did more meditating on just self-healing throughout my life and turning my life around, that by my experience anyway, if you become really proficient at meditation, you can actually achieve the same you can with drugs. I know it's more difficult. You got to put the work in, because with the drugs, you could just pop, smoke or inject or drink or do whatever you're going to do. And I'm not a proponent of those things. I'm not against it for you people. I myself
raise your glass, everybody cheers, even if it's milk or orange juice.
Sure, absolutely. So I do think that but again, like I said, through meditation you can achieve a lot of these things. But you folks mentioned already when we were talking about the reincarnation that you've already achieved some of these out-of-body experiences, and I was just really curious about some of the questions. You said you don't want to come back to this world, but having achieved an out-of-body experience, you must think that this isn't your first incarnation. Am I correct with that?
It's not. No, I've been here before. I know I have, because when I was a little girl, I could knit and sew and crochet before I was taught. So I know I have.
Fair enough. So when you said you've been here before, do you mean you've been in a body before, or actually here on this planet specifically? And is it this planet the only planet that you've ever existed on in a physical form?
I don't know. Oh, you know what? I did want to go and see a hypnotherapist to find all this out, but I'm scared in case I become so upset by everything that it pushed me over the edge, just like the whole thing with the fetus thing pushed me over the edge. Because I did want to go and see someone about it, but I'm too scared. It terrifies me.
Fair enough. No, I appreciate you letting me ask these personal questions, because I'm really not meaning to be rude or, get into your personal life. It just seemed like you guys were discussing that. So, Organic, you mentioned some things about some experiences. I thought, do you have any other answers to those questions about have you existed in another form before, or another plane, another planet?
I've existed before as a female, and I know I have, because I could do these weird little things since my earliest memories that no one taught me. I just do it. So obviously, that's probably a little slave in some Victorian household somewhere. Wouldn't surprise me.
Definitely a silent movie showgirl.
So this is actually kind of an interesting thing that she does mention, that she had the ability to croquet. No, that's not the right word for it. Crochet. I don't even know what the fuck that is. Is that like sewing, I think? Yeah, I think that's the sewing thing. Needle. I don't know what it is. Crochet. I think it's not croquet, right? Croquet is with like the golf with the paddles and stuff. At any rate, whatever it was she was doing, she felt like she had this ability to do this as a small child before, and she was never taught this, and she attributes this to living a past life. Now, I actually have a family member that is transgender, and this is a really interesting thing for me, and I really want to reach out to some of my transgender friends on the internet. I know Better Than Ember has offered to get together with me and help me to understand some things, because I'm going to say it right now, I'm very ignorant about this topic. I've actually been studying it more. I just don't have time for all the things I want to study. And I do find the study of identity to be fascinating. And I think there's a lot of science out there in regards to the identity concept. And so in the past, I've been very supportive of using pronouns because that was just out of respect. But I didn't really realize there was as much to it as there is scientifically. And so there's a real interesting field to study there, because I've also been talking about the free will concept. They've been doing what they call split brain patient studies. And I don't want to get too deep into that, because really there's a whole video to be made about that. And I'd like to do that on a live stream where I have people join the conversation because it is really interesting. I don't know if you guys have looked into the split brain stuff. But the whole concept of identity. The reason I'm talking about that is because I actually have a family member who is a transgender. Now, they do not refer to themselves as transgender. They actually refer to themselves as transsexual. And people can call themselves whatever they want. As far as I'm concerned, it's a free country. But so when I talk about them, I'd say transsexual. And if I talk about more modern, contemporary people, I think they go with transgender. So if you're listening to this and you're one of the other trans something, please don't be offended. I'm just trying to please everybody, and you can't do that at some point. But my family member who is transsexual, they actually believe in reincarnation, and they believe that they were previously a woman in their past life, and they attribute that to the gender dysphoria they're experiencing in this lifetime. And so it was fascinating. Now, this discussion I had with this person, I've known this person my whole life, and they actually fought in the Vietnam War. So just to give you an idea of the background, they were dealing with this way before this ever there was no social media, there was no internet, nothing, none of this stuff was going on. It was not this big social movement. And so I asked him recently, and I say him because he actually prefers to go by this pronoun, him, even though he believes that he was a previously woman, because he was raised as a man, and maybe because he's old school, and that's just, he's very proud of some of the things he's accomplished as a quote unquote man. So it gets really confusing. You have to really address each person as an individual. We cannot just make blanket assumptions on a topic like this, or anything else for that matter. So there are going to be some people say, oh my God, you're a phobe of some kind because you're calling a transgender woman him. But I know this person personally, and that's actually what they prefer. So when it comes to somebody like Ember, for example, I always refer to her as her because that's my understanding of what she prefers. So I try to meet everybody where they're at, but you're never going to fucking win that argument, when it comes to pleasing everybody. So at the end of the day, you guys should focus on being respectful of everybody as best you can. Respect yourself. And if people don't accept you because they don't think you're towing their line, fuck them, too fucking bad. But at any rate, they do this. My family member, the transsexual family member I have, actually believes in reincarnation and feels like that's where this dysphoria was coming from having lived a previous life as a woman. And I found that to be quite fascinating. Now, I obviously don't believe in reincarnation, but that is a very interesting way to think about it. Anyway, I thought I might share that with you.
Give her credit.
Stop making fun of me. But I think most of us have lived before. It's very common. People do talk about it, but it all gets dissed. Oh, don't be so stupid, we say to our children. Well, people say to their children when children talk about it. And they do.
No, I appreciate that. What we have a lot of debates, a lot of times about politics or religion, on other people's channels. I've had some discussions on my channel, and one of the things I don't do is we talked about the global flood, right? The myth, and I will absolutely debate something like that. I debate morality issues when it comes to certain religious claims. I do formal debates on that, but what I do not do is discredit people's personal experiences. If somebody says they have had a personal experience or a spiritual experience or a miraculous experience, that's for them. That's their journey, and I'm not going to try and discredit them or I feel that would be very disrespectful. It may not necessarily move the needle for me, I'll be honest with you, but maybe I'll hear something someday that will. And I do think that some of the things you guys have said here about reincarnation is very interesting to me, because as I mentioned before, in my studies about ethics and virtue ethics, I've come across certain philosophical models that do discuss the soul. And I find it to be a very interesting concept when we look at what virtue really, how to attain virtue, what a long journey it would be, because like the sister said, to live a perfectly virtuous life in one go around does seem impossible. I don't like to use the word impossible for anything, but yeah, it's very difficult, if not impossible. So it would require multiple existences. But my understanding, having studied some of the Eastern religions, like I don't know if you're familiar with Ramana Yogananda and the Self-Realization Fellowship, for example, but when they talk about reincarnation, we begin to shape the soul according to this belief system. We begin to shape the soul through our experiences on one particular life. So let's just use this life as an easy example. After this life is over, this physical life, the soul would then continue on, and almost with the analogy the brother was using with Mott's feather, right? Our choices are written down on our heart or on our soul. That predetermines, if you will, where we go into the next existence. And so it's possible to exist in a world that's actually far worse than this one, believe it or not. And I think this might be where concepts of hell can come into play. Some people say this is hell that we're living right now. I've heard other religious ideas where we're actually living in heaven and hell on earth, because people's experiences on this planet can be vastly different. The sister was talking about starving children. I know people who are extremely affluent, who have so much money they can take a bath in it. And you know what I mean? Like their life experience is so vastly different than that of a person who can't even put food on the plate, doesn't have shelter. So this world could be heaven or hell if we want to use that terminology. So it could very well just be happening in this one world. But because of what I said before about the universe being so incredibly vast, there could be a planet on the other side of the Milky Way we wouldn't even have access to, that could be more of a utopia than what we're experiencing now. And it would be our soul, according to these religions. And I'm not trying to preach you guys, because I'm not saying I even believe this. It's just something I've studied. According to these religions that talk about reincarnation, our soul would naturally go to the next existence. That would be better if we tried to live a more virtuous life. The soul had more virtuous energy, I guess would be the way to put it, written onto it or encoded into it. Maybe it would naturally go, just like a fish doesn't try to fly and a bird doesn't try to swim because it naturally needs to live within its environment. The soul would naturally reincarnate into a better or worse or even similar existence, depending on the progress or digression of our virtue. Does that
So for
make
the
any
crowd,
sense at all?
the honeys get less fly and the robes become darker, less transparent, thicker, and less revealing. All right, continue.
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it more succinctly than what I did, because I don't really follow these religions, so I'm really just kind of quoting from different various religious texts or books or authors that I've read. And I'm just curious, because you guys have talked about out-of-body experiences and reincarnation, and I'm just wondering if you've had any access to a different, or if you at least feel like you've had any access previously to a different existence that was either better or worse, or maybe located in a different plane, something of that nature, a different planet even.
I daren't see it. Like I said, I'd like to go see a therapist, but I daren't, because I'm scared, because I discover something so upsetting. And I've got no one in life anymore. I'm completely on my own. I've got my neighbours and stuff, but I've got nobody I can go to say, give me a hug, because I've been upset, so I'm too scared to do it. And that's the truth. Just too frightened in case I get upset. I know it sounds insane.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, one of the things I might just offer to you as a brother is when you study someone like a Nietzsche, for example, and he start talking about nihilism and how, once you leave your particular religious belief, in particular the Abrahamic belief, you lose your belief in God, then what you do is you lose a purpose, because most religious people believe that without God, there can be no purpose in life.
Yes.
And so, but what Nietzsche said is that this is actually not the end. This is the beginning of the journey. It's not the end of the journey. This is really the beginning, because once you realize that there's no external purpose that's driving you, you start to make your own purpose in life. And then once you get to this point, then you realize you can become more of what he called the Uberman, and we often translate it as like Superman, so that you get to this point where you're so elevated spiritually that you realize that the beauty of life is in the journey and in the experience itself, which means having a healthy appreciation for both the good times and the bad times. If that's once you can learn to embrace, and this also, you can see this like in Taoism, for example, once you would learn to embrace the experience itself, don't get too high with the good times, don't get too low with the bad times, but value the journey for what it is. This is how you attain peace. And
guys, go ahead and go to the champagne room. This is a reminder. Champagne room is a.
Yeah, I'd like to just highlight this part of the conversation for a second, because I have had some interesting conversations with theists, Christians in particular, about nihilism. And as far as I can tell, the significant majority of nihilists are actually religious people who believe that without God there can be no purpose. I've never actually met, and I've interacted with a lot of atheists and agnostics, in particular over the last 6 months through the internet. And I don't know any of them that are actually nihilists. In fact, I know several of them have specifically said they are not nihilists. So I think that's kind of interesting. But as far as the nihilism thing goes, whether you believe that there's a purpose to life or not, everyone should understand that we ultimately give life its value, right? It's how we feel about our choices, how we feel about things that are happening to us, our environment, the way that impacts us, and the positive or negative effect that we can have on our environment, hopes and dreams, things of this nature. We really have a lot of control over our emotional position, our mental position when it comes to quote unquote purpose. And I think that when it comes to if we just step back from the situation and look at evolution, for example, the strong, healthy adults, they're in a position to raise the young, and they're in a position to nurture the elderly, and they're in a position to collect all the food and build all the structures, right? Put the roof over everybody's head, because they're physically and mentally capable, the most capable in life at that point, when you're a strong and adult. Then you grow to be an older person, right? Well, what value do you have at that point? Well, the elderly people actually have a tremendous value, because they give us direct access to the past. Right now, our other only access is in reading books, watching old videos and things like this nature, but that's really not direct access so much. But the elderly people, they already experienced all that stuff in person, firsthand, and that is like really tangible access to the past, something very unique that only they can provide. The youth, right, the youngest people, the children, they can't build the shelters, they can't collect the food, they don't have access to the past, but they actually represent something extremely important, and that's the future, right? And so the young people watch the strong adults caring for everybody, and they are taught and instructed, because of the environment, that the strong adults are caring for the elderly people. They see the value the elderly people have. Then those young people, those children, they eventually grow up to become those strong adults. So everybody has a role to play, and it's a total cycle. And that cycle, that evolutionary cycle, that biological, completely organic cycle, no gods required, right, is actually is where value can come from. We know that all organic organisms, and we are an organic organism, right? All organic organisms want to survive. The ones that don't clearly aren't around, right? So every living thing wants to live by its very nature. So life in and of itself, scientifically speaking, has a value, an inherent value to it. Now, as an objective moralist, right, as a moral realist, I believe that every human being has an inherent value. I believe we are all moral agents. We all have, we all need our freedom and well-being in order to set goals, right, and take actions. And so I believe that's just an inherent part of humanity. Every human being is a moral agent. Every human being has an equal right to their freedom and well-being. And so there's this inherent value that I see in individuals as just people, just for the fuck's sake of being a person. Every person has some inherent value for being a human being, and we should treat each other like that, especially maybe even people we disagree with. You know, remember at the end of the day that we are all human beings. We're all glorified apes. We're all sharing one planet. We've got to fucking work together. I do think having differences is important. I actually love diversity. I think that it's important to have disagreement. What I'm trying to do with my channel and with this community is to encourage people to find respectful ways and productive ways to communicate about our differences. But we do need those differences. Diversity is very important. If everybody agreed on everything, science would be completely stagnant. Technology would be completely stagnant. We would not evolve or continue to progress, because everybody would be in agreement that we're just fine where we're at, right? So we need this pushback. So the value of this nihilism thing, it's really the religious people who just can't see any value outside of these preconceived, these presuppositions that they have about the existence of a God that gives them value. They don't really understand the biological value that we have, that we can see just as a living organism. They don't understand the value that human beings can have just for the sake of being a human being. And they don't understand the ability that they have themselves to give value to life. And it's very interesting that the religious people are always saying, oh, those atheists and agnostics, they must be nihilists because they don't have God in their life, when that seems to be completely the opposite. But anyway, that's kind of a side note.
No, I'm afraid I'm a terrible pessimist. Plus, I used to belong to the animal rights movement, and I look at what we do to the creature, this universe, this world that I live in, and I don't. It just takes my whole. It's taken my whole life over. Always since I was a little girl, it started. I've always been the same. You know, all I see is this massacre, daily massacre. Yes, I'm a bit of a handful. I have to admit it. I'm a miserable old bag. I admit I'm on 60 mgs of Seroxat every day. Plus I'm on codeine. I'm a miserable old bag. I am. That's why I come here. If I was happy, I wouldn't come here, would I?
Oh, you just need us, and you need some vitamin D. Make sure you get some sunshine, and keep petting those cats.
Vitamin D.
Keep petting those cats. Go get a new kitten. Go get a new fresh kitten.
I've already got 7.
This is a talk show. If you would like to join the conversation, please feel welcome to come on and talk right now. The link is available in the live chat on YouTube. This is a talk show. If you would like to join the conversation,
I hear extra
please
voices.
feel welcome
Y'all hear
to come
that?
on and talk
Yes.
right now. The link is available in the live chat on YouTube. This is a
Is it the
talk show.
background feed? It's like, come on, click the button.
I just want to, just in case anybody's just joining us, I want to make sure and shout out the Finding Gnosis channel. I've got the link plugged into the description of this video. I think when I set up the description, I might have called it Digital Gnosis. That's another gentleman who I've interacted with, and he actually helped me work on my syllogism for objective morality, and I really appreciate his time when I spoke with him on Dr. Derek McAllister's channel. But this is not Digital Gnosis. This is the Finding Gnosis channel. It's a great channel. Please check out his channel, support it, leave positive comments. If you do go over there, let them know that Objective Ethics sent you. We're doing this video for educational purposes only. As you can see, I was part of this discussion. And again, the link is in the description.
Hello, say hi to the chat. Hi to the chat. Y'all have any questions? Metaphysical, religious, superficial, non-superficial, things that might offend other channels, but we could probably answer for you. Go ahead and put them in there. We'll put our minds together for you.
Organic. D.W. used to be a real old misery guts when I first met him. Now
we got a fresh.
Sort of high all the time.
It's the archons. Which archons exactly? The archangels, the Enochian stuff, or something else? John D, or are we talking something else? What do you call the archons?
Who, me?
Yeah, what do you call the archons? Chickpea? Yeah, who are the archons to you, Chickpea?
What do you mean? What do I call the archons? I don't know all their names. But
Yeah,
I
what
believe
does
in
that word mean to you? Yeah, just what does that mean?
Well, they say that when you go into the light, you meet all these beings, the archons, and all the rest of them, and they start the whole, give you a little sort of trial by jury type of thing.
Guys, keep an eye on the live chat. Objective ethics. There's a question for you there from Loho, who says they'd like your thoughts on Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. By the way, anybody watching, click on the link. We're live. This is the Finding Gnosis show on YouTube. Come on us and join the conversation. We're live on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. So yeah, look us up on YouTube if you're watching on any of the other platforms. And you'll find the link there to come on and talk. So come on and talk.
Have you finished? Tenty's finished. As I was saying, organic. They talk about the tunnel of light. They talk about the dark. So if you go to the tunnel of light after you've been to the checkpoint, etc., etc., the whole process starts again. You go through sort of little court case, and then
But we give you a free. Never mind.
What?
You get a free red lightsaber when you go to the dark side. Continue.
Red lightsaber. What's that? Red lightsaber. What's that? Hello. What's a free red?
Star Wars. Darth Vader carries a red light. He wants Luke to go to the dark side.
I haven't watched, but they do say, well, according to David Icke, and I read his books, I suppose that's where I get all my rubbish from.
Chick is a reader of David Icke, guys.
Stop it.
Continue. Go ahead.
I read him too. Star Wars, okay? Right. According to
read David Icke as well.
Yeah. Well, he says to not go into the light, go into the dark, because no one's ever come back from the light, from the dark, only from the light. So that's how they know about it. And I don't know. I can't remember being there. I'm only going by what I've read in silly books. But it seems quite feasible to me. Because, this universe is a shithole. And nothing surprises me. I'm sorry, if I was happy clappy, I wouldn't come here, would I? I'd be watching something happy clappy on YouTube. Can you say?
Well, I think to address what the person was asking about.
What?
Sorry, continue.
Oh, yeah. I just thought maybe I should address just really quickly what the question was about the eternal recurrence. This is, and I'm not an expert in Nietzsche, but my rudimentary understanding is this is basically what I was talking about with the if the soul is continuously recurring, and I do think, again, I'm not necessarily into the metaphysics of things. I find it fascinating, but I'm certainly not making any truth claims here. But I do think that the cosmological model that makes the most sense to me is the Big Bang, Big Bounce. So it's just constantly, the universe is constantly expanding and shrinking, much like a breathing kind of, not to anthropomorphize it too much, but, so if that's the case, then, this could lead credence to a model of some type of eternal soul or something that comes back each time because the universe is continuing to re-experience itself, re-express itself, if I may. Perhaps consciousness being fundamental would play a part in that if that model were actually true. And again, I'm not making any truth claims here. I'm just throwing different ideas I've been exposed to.
Breath of Brahma? Is that the same when the...
Sure. Yes, absolutely. This is exactly how the Hindus would put that. Exactly right. The Brahman is the role that the soul plays in the ultimate substance of truth. The Taoists would call it the way, but I do believe in this constant or cosmological model makes the most sense, with this big bang, big crunch. And so if that's the case, the universe could be eternal. And if consciousness was fundamental, that would inherently make that eternal. And if consciousness is a necessary precondition for the existence of anything else, one just naturally leads to the other. It's a very interesting concept. And when Nietzsche, this eternal recurrence concept, and this is not Nietzsche's original idea, obviously. This has been around. The Stoics talked about this, and they got this probably influenced from Eastern mythology or theologies or whatever that believed in reincarnation and eternal. Like you said, the Brahman, for example, from the Hindus is probably one of the oldest organized religions in the world. Could have easily come to the Stoics via the Silk Road trade routes. So these ideas were being exchanged long before Nietzsche ever came into the scene, but he kind of revived it. And his Brahman, his Uberman concept, what I was mentioning to the sister, to try to give her a ray of hope, is that, if we could step back from the situation, step back for our emotions just long enough to realize that there is a certain beauty in the struggle, and we can use small examples to try and get our heads around this example, this idea. So I'm really big into exercise. I think exercising the body is extremely important for just overall mental health. Physical health is actually a very important part of mental health, believe it or not. So
yeah, I've got RA
when you exercise the body, fair enough. So when you exercise the body, you actually break the muscles down. You're actually tearing muscle fibers, and right, so that you can build them up.
I'm just a brain in a jar. I'm just a brain in a jar.
Brother?
I'm just a brain in a lonely
Fair
jar.
enough. So if we're gonna throw our hands up and just run to solipsism.
Horror movie. It's like the brain in a jar. That's how I feel some days. But
yeah, we can just throw our hands up at all of it and run to solipsism and say it's just my brain. It's not your brain actually, brother. It's my brain that's in the jar. You guys are just all.
I think it's weird how they all put us in digital prisons where we're all basically just talking to a wall, and we're like, can anybody hear me?
Could be. I think that's kind of the concept. That there's been a few different movies actually, but I think The Matrix is probably the most popular that people would be familiar with. We're all just plugged into the Matrix, right?
Yeah, I mean, earlier would be the prison with no walls, the THX 1138 thing where everything's whited out. The guy doesn't even know where he's going until he pops the manhole open. He's like never seen the sun.
Yeah, that's based off of Plato's The Cave, right? Where we're all just living in the cave. We're experiencing is the shadows on the wall. And
which I think is so similar to Socrates and Jesus. Like it's almost the retelling in different ways. They do have different twists on it for sure. Jesus has the parables, and Socrates doesn't. He goes on trial and basically isn't truly forced to drink the hemlock. He's like trying to take it as his badge of winning to lose the argument, to have them put him to death for what he said over his stance, so it's like that was semi self-inflicted more than the other ones, I think. But go on. Sorry.
No. I mean, we're definitely, because we really only know of Socrates because of Plato, because he was Plato's teacher. So we're definitely there's going to be some similarities. Plato diverged with his forms, and his cave analogy is divergent from Socrates, but we do get Socrates from Plato. So there's obviously a huge influence. And then of course, Aristotle is Plato's student. So there's this thread that goes from Plato.
Who was Alexander the Great's teacher, correct? Alexander the Great's teacher.
Yeah, one of our guests was asking about my feelings about Islam. So my feelings about Islam is the same as I feel about every religion, to be honest with you. I think that there's actually a lot of beauty in every religion. I don't think Islam is any different. There's some really great literature in there. There's some really useful things that you can glean from it. The problem I have with these religions is the fact that they're dogmatic. And so they are oftentimes, any type of progression is really discouraged, sometimes by force, oftentimes actually, even if it's social outcasting, which is a very effective way of discouraging people to do something or not do something. And I think that's one of the problems. We need to, as time goes on, we are exposed to new information. Science and technology helps us out a lot with that. Obviously, we're better at understanding history. We're better at recognizing mistakes from the past. So we need to be flexible. We need to be able to adapt to new information. And that's extremely important. And religions are very dogmatic. They do not allow any change. They're really against it. And it's because people who are in charge, power structures are built using these religions. And so as a kind of a foundation, and so it becomes kind of fundamental to the power structure and to the control element that leaders have over societies. So they don't want change. They want people towing the line. They want people doing what they're told, paying their taxes, paying their tithes to the church, in home and in bed by 9 p.m. Don't look at another man. Don't be gay. Oh my goodness. Don't do any of these kind of things. They're extremely unfair, in my opinion. I just realized I need to plug in my laptop here before this thing dies on me. I think this is the right cord. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm a mess when it comes to all this live streaming stuff. I'm so disorganized. Okay. Is that the right one? Well, it fit in the hole. That's what she said. All right. So, so I don't know where that came from, but at any rate, I can't believe I just said that. That was fucking hilarious. Yeah, so no, I don't have a problem with Islam in general. Like I said, I can look at any religion and I could say, yeah, I could see some really beautiful things there. But I could also look at the way these religions get used. And I've said this before in other videos. I view religions in the same way that I view guns. You know, the saying that guns don't kill people, people kill people. The religion is the same way. You know, a religion in and of itself is neither good nor bad, in my opinion. It's what are people going to do with it? Do people use it to make their lives better? To just inspire people to do better, then I think it's a wonderful thing. Does it cause us to judge others unfairly? Then I think it's a bad thing. Does it cause us to vote for laws that are unfair to everybody? I think it's a bad thing. Does it cause us to reject science, to start telling our kids that the earth is only 6,000 years old, the world is flat, and there was this global flood and a rickety wooden boat, you know, that had a bunch of animals on it? No, no, no. This is harmful in my opinion. Anti-science stuff is very harmful. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way. So I think, you know, one interesting thing that I've seen here in America, and I don't know how fast, I haven't really been able to track it yet, and maybe I should look into it, but there's this type of Christianity called progressive Christianity. And it actually, a lot of denominations do this. And even within the Catholic Church, they don't call it progressive Catholicism, but the Catholic Church leaves itself open to make certain changes because, you know, the Pope or, you know, there's different people who could get revelations, you know, from God, quote unquote, kind of like up to date, you know, information that God might want to give to the church, and then the church passes on to the people. So that Catholicism is actually a little bit more flexible. It's kind of can be progressive. I know that Catholicism has a lot of churches that were actually pro LGBTQ and pro gay marriage and stuff like that. So they can be progressive, but there's actually a type of Christianity called progressive Christianity. And they embrace the contradictions in the Bible. They accept a lot of critical scholarship, things of this nature. They definitely are very progressive when it comes to like gay rights and the gay rights movement and things of that nature, transgender people. So Christianity, if it's going to survive, in my opinion, in the Western countries, is going to need to adopt this more progressive view, because human secularism, right, is really, ever since the age of enlightenment, it has been growing and growing and growing. Most of the moral and ethical progress that we have made, if not all of it, has been the result of human secularism. So religions are going to have to adapt, in my opinion. I could be wrong. You know, there's obviously what we experience in the West is going to be different than how things are in the Middle East. And I have never visited there. I only have friends who are from there. Like I have some really good neighbors that are Muslims and stuff, but they're wonderful people. Like we get along really, really, really well. They are the nicest people. So it does bother me when I hear people criticize Muslims and say, oh, they're all terrorists or bad people or something because they're, no, I don't think that's true at all. I think they're just like anybody else. They're human beings and they have the potential for being good human beings or bad human beings. So just to kind of respond to that question.
And he died 1 year after Alexander. So Alexander died, I believe, in 323 BC, and then 322 for Aristotle. And these guys were all sequential in a period from about 400 BC. I think Socrates was 399 BC is when he passed. Go on.
And but all of this is interconnected. You know, when you look at the Greco-Roman period, and you look at how the world had already shrunk between Asia and Asia Minor in particular, where like Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, first temple into second temple, Judaism, Greek mythology, all of these ideas kind of merged together into the Greco-Roman area. Alexander is a huge part of that. Obviously, the Silk Road I mentioned earlier, they're part of this because you're talking about the 3rd century BCE, when they started really developing the Silk Road trade route, which brought not just goods and services, but ideas from the east to the west. So all of this is coming together, and you start to see the ideas kind of bleeding into each other. And Nietzsche, with this eternal recurrence that the gentleman in the chat was asking about, is just basically just kind of reimagining a very old idea. And I did divert too much with the cosmological model. I probably shouldn't have gone down that analogy, but it does seem like, you know, with the sister, if we do embrace the journey, if we do recognize that it takes a certain amount of pain can lead to a certain amount of pleasure, and we could look at numerous examples in our lives of this. It's difficult to say, if you really want to look at it philosophically, can we really say that the the pain is a bad thing. I mean, we want to say, of course, terrible pain and terrible struggle like poverty and starving and natural disasters. These are a terrible thing. But if it wasn't for the fact that the asteroid crashed into the planet 65 million years ago and just hit the reset button, we wouldn't even be here. Now, I know if you're a nihilist, ultimately you don't want to be here. You think this is terrible. Maybe you think that, fuck that goddamn asteroid, fuck everything. Now I have to live this terrible life, right, where we eat animals. But I think for the most of us, we actually want to live. Evolution is a guided process, so to speak, a naturally guided process where organisms want to reproduce. They take in energy and they want to survive. We have these survival instincts. So most of us, no matter what we might say, if we get thrown into a river and we can't swim, no matter how depressed we are, we're still going to try to struggle and try to get out of that water.
That's hormonal objective. That's all hormonal. You do know that. The urge to breed and everything is hormonal.
Survival of species,
Absolutely.
but he's also saying it's a very small chance that we as non-lizard and non-insect became the #1 species on the planet through accidental behaviors of volcanoes and asteroid strikes and comet.
Exactly right. How terrible would it be if the asteroid wiped everything out? Well, for the dinosaurs it was terrible, but for us, it was imperative. We wouldn't be here without this quote unquote terrible thing. So it just gives us a way to measure the good and the bad. And if we step back to the situation, put down our presuppositions, set aside our own emotional attachment to the ideas that we have, our idealistic ideas and our reactions to things that have happened, presuppositions, as I said, and we just take things for what they are at face value. Again, enjoy the journey because you're on this roller coaster. You are not getting off unless you really choose to. And I do not like to talk like that because I don't want to encourage people to do bad things. But we're on this roller coaster. The best thing you can do is enjoy the ride. Yeah, I just want to highlight something else that Deacon Verdeman had said, and I didn't highlight it then, but I think it was really important. He said that there actually is kind of this objective measurement of good because of the laws of logic. And I agree 100%. Now, I'm obviously a moral realist. So, Deacon Verdeman, so good to see you, brother. I will look forward to seeing you on Saturday afternoon. We're going to do a show together. We're going to be discussing actually logic. Speaking of that, I know, big shocker, Deacon Verdeman and logic. It's really his wheelhouse, and I'm looking forward to him sharing with our community here. We're going to go over 3 of the major, the most common arguments we get for the existence of God: the Kalam cosmological argument, the watchmaker argument, often known as intelligent design. And then, of course, everybody's favorite tag, because we can't have access to intelligence, right, without God. So, yeah, we're going to be going over those, looking at the logical fallacies that are actually involved. And, yeah, I do agree about the yin and yang as well, brother. That I think there's a lot to be said for that. But at any rate, so what Deacon Verdeman said, though, about the objective good, we could look at certain things and objectively say this is good, and therefore the opposite is bad, right? So, or vice versa, you could say this is bad and the opposite is good. So, drinking motor oil is objectively bad, right? It's unhealthy. It's going to kill you. If there's this value to life, and we discussed earlier that there's this inherent value to life. So I agree with that very much. And as a moral realist, that really fits into my personal model.
You obviously don't like Schopenhauer very much.
Not what I've read, but
yeah, he's my favorite writer. You see, this is how different you and me are.
Very little.
But they invented the bar guys and music and dancing and the word self-inflicted. All right, continue.
But I'm just saying, yeah, I love the works of Emile Caron and Schopenhauer and David Benatar. They're all 3 miserable, grumpy guys, and I love them. And if Emile Caron was alive, I would get on a plane and go and find him. I love what he has to say. See, we're reading from totally different scripts, aren't we? Yes.
No, I'm going to credit you with this. And Schopenhauer is actually on my long list of philosophers to get into. So I'm going to bump him up the list.
You won't like him
because of this conversation.
You won't like him.
No, I don't. I have a very basic understanding of, because again, nihilism would be one of the things, but it's really beyond nihilism because it's more of this. It's not. It's what was it? Existentialism maybe might be a better word for it for Schopenhauer, but. Yeah, but I think a lot of these authors and a lot of these philosophers who talk about how miserable things.
What were you saying about them? Can't hear you. Objectives. Objective. Oh, but I can't hear what he was saying. Objective. I couldn't hear what you were saying about.
You lost your audio. Objective. Can you check it and start over about 30 seconds ago?
I'm so sorry.
Right. I'm miking out for a second.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My phone started ringing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, my phone started ringing and it everything took a shit. So yeah, no, I do think that these people who have a terrible view and they communicate, oh, the world is such a bad place and stuff.
Yeah.
They probably do suffer from some depression and things of this nature.
Yeah, I've got that problem.
I have no doubt that's true.
Yes.
But I do think that a lot of it is just a feeling the need to express ourselves.
Yeah.
And that maybe, and again, you know, I don't want to, I'm not throwing shade here, but maybe that just getting out that expression is like kind of a bit of a release. And so maybe at the end of the day, maybe we're not quite as convinced things are as bad as we say they are, but we have this emotional energy that we need we need an avenue, a way to express it.
Well, of course.
So like with a Schopenhauer, yeah, if he was really that, if he was that miserable, I don't think that he would take the time and energy to share his thoughts, to share with anybody, because he would be so self-absorbed.
No, you see, now you're wrong here, Objectives, because now I've come here to have a good old wine, so I'm sharing it all. You see, I tell everybody. I think
yes, absolutely.
Right.
But you've been very forthcoming and very honest and say that this is basically like your therapy session. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So
how do you know that about me? You've been listening to what I'm saying.
Right, exactly. I've just been listening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit naughty, isn't it, really? I come here to offload all my negative thoughts about the universe. I do have positive thoughts. I love all the cats and plants. I kiss my plants, you see, so I'm not that bad. I kiss trees and plants and cats, and if I see a snail on the road, I carry it away to some grass. I'm not all bad. Yeah, I kiss trees. Hello. Hello, I said I kiss trees. Okay, there's no one here anymore.
No, I was just like, I realized I've been kind of dominating the conversation because you guys have really inspired me with a lot of the things you've been talking about, and I feel I should probably step back and let you guys continue.
Oh, we're here. We're here. I'm sorry. I just want to close the mic. I have y'all on two devices here.
But Objectives, I'm not all bad. Like I said, I kiss trees and I kiss my plants and I kiss my cats. So I'm not all bad.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit of balance there, you know. That life is a balance. There's a positive and there's a negative. Whether there's a reincarnation or not, I cannot speak on those things. You know, I don't see.
Well, there is.
I don't necessarily see it. But
we have to call it like it is. You got to handle these things. Some things with a Scottish broadsword, and there can only be one. You know what I mean?
Now, I do believe Objectives that when you leave here, they get hold of you and just recycle you into a new meat bag for another 70 years of wash, rinse, repeat. A life of making your masters richer and richer before you die.
So when you leave here, you use the word that they recycle you into a new meat bag. So who's they? I know earlier you mentioned kind of like this Nephilim. You didn't use the word Nephilim, but you mentioned the gentleman who really promotes this Nephilim.
The whole thing that you meet when you leave here.
And so are these physical beings? Are these like a highly evolved physical being that are in control of this?
I don't know what they are. Who knows what they are? I don't know what they are. I'm only going by what I've read in books. I don't know that much about them, but
okay.
You know, they yeah.
And then you use the phrase "until you die." So when you say that, are you meaning that ultimately your soul will not reincarnate at some point, like you will just cease to exist?
Your soul keeps reincarnating. That's the trouble. Your soul keeps reincarnating because it does. Your soul doesn't remember anything. Your soul is just your soul, isn't it? It's the brain that remembers. The soul, I don't know what the soul does. I can always feel mine. I don't know what it does. I know it's there. So I can feel it.
Had to let the cat in, guys.
What sort of a cat have you got?
The same ones I always have.
Let's see.
He walked away. It was the mail coming in.
Let's see.
So I have the light gray tabby, and I have the torties.
So we've got about a little less than 10 minutes left on this video before I left the conversation. So I'm going to let the rest of it run out because it is kind of funny, some of the stuff, and interesting, some of the last few comments that were made. And then I want to address one of these comments that Saji left about subjective and objective, and then we'll close it down.
How many torties have you got?
2, one fat one and one not fat one.
Oh, I've got 2 torties. I've got 2 Chickpea. Me and Chickpea, the cat you see there.
I'm drinking my ginger beer now, non-alcohol, just straight up ginger.
We were together for nearly 20 years, me and Chicks. I lost her almost 10 years ago now. But yeah, I've got 2 torties, 2 tabbies, 1 black cat, 1 little tuxedo.
Ooh, it's cat time, guys. Those are wonderful cats.
Yes, all cats are wonderful. Cats are my favorite life form, and they are. I love cats. My first love was a cat, and my last love will be a cat. I love cats.
That's great. I'm glad it makes you happy, and something good about life. Being positive does help. I think it does help our outlook, and that helps our vibration, what we get in, what we put out, what we, there is some kind of balance there.
No, I love my cats. God, they spoil little things.
For the whole thing, like the ripples in the whole pond. We add to that vibration. You want to add something good, like the love of cats.
Love of cats. But spoiled, they are so spoiled, my cats. I spend more on their food and their medical treatment than I do on my own. They see the best doctors. I have to make do with the NHS. They get the best of everything, and I have to make do with the rubbish that's left. It's true, but I love them to bits. But Chickpea...
Yeah, you put the cats first. That's really good and kind of you. I hope they care and love you just as you love them, hon. I hope that they always hang out and are always coming back, no matter how lost they get in one of their cat episode adventures in the neighborhood.
Yeah, they're all with me. I'm surrounded by all 7 of them at the moment. Yeah, they're all indoors at the moment, all with me, just surrounding me. But Chickpea clawed away right into my soul, that little cat. And I still, every now and again, find myself praying to a God I don't even believe in to resurrect her. That's how mad it all is, because she's buried outside. And along with about 8 other cats, because I've lived it for a long time.
Yeah, you're thinking that's a pet cemetery. That's not which God you worship. Okay, continue. That's a Stephen King book and some special dirt. That's some cursed dirt to bring back. Don't do it, children. Not good. No. Do not recommend, guys.
What?
Putting your pet in a cursed pet cemetery.
Oh, they're out in the garden.
Yeah, that's fine. You can put your pet in your garden, guys. Check your local laws and your compost. But yeah, that's probably fine.
I have to bury them. It's allowed.
Keep it on the hush. Just dig a hole.
I live in a flat.
Maybe big enough for a relative. All right, continue.
Hey, Dave, they're all here. But I love them to bits. But I love Chickpea like, I don't know. I worship the ground she walked on. She was just a gorgeous cat.
Do we have any other existential questions or about life, death, the hereafter, where we fit in the Thanaton?
I just have one more question, if I may. I don't want to divert from the cat conversation. Cats are great. I mean, and I can clearly see they're very
divert.
To the
we love them. My cat's about to steal my chair. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah, just one more question. So when you guys are reincarnating, and I understand that you said that there's a lot of the stuff you don't know, you don't have access to that information. I really appreciate you just letting me ask you some questions because I find this idea to be quite fascinating. Could it be that you reincarnated into a different life form other than a person? Like, could you have been a plant or a cat or something, for example? Or is it always coming back as a person, a human being?
I've got no idea. But you don't learn to crochet when you're a cat or a plant. So I suspect in my last life, because I could crochet from my earliest memories, and my mother said she didn't understand how it could be that I could crochet because no one taught me. So I must have brought it from another life.
I think some of the cycles are human, but some of the cycles don't have to be human. That's what I believe. So I think it's you probably go through multiple ones. And I thought some people on their way to nirvana have to be a cow. That's why they don't eat beef. But continue, or I don't know if that's, I don't know if someone else wanted to answer that.
I'll tell you something weird, Organic. Now, I was from my earliest memories, when I was a little girl, before my mother married my English stepfather, meat wasn't an issue because it wasn't forced on me. Then she married this English squaddy, and all of a sudden meat became an issue because he was a meat eater. But I knew the truth about meat before being told it. I could already sense it. Something I wasn't happy about it, I've always been the same. I've been like all my life. I'm still here. I'm in my 70s now, still here. So it's, you can live without it. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know if I have time to get into the whole vegan thing. It is a conversation I wanted to do at some points because there's some interesting thoughts around veganism, and maybe I should couch that for later.
I'm not a vegetarian, guys. I don't eat a lot of meat, but I am not a vegetarian. But continue. I've tried to be in the past. I don't like to fight it or debate it myself because I know how strongly people feel about it. And I've made the mistake of ordering pepperoni pizza and people not being happy, whether it's religious or vegetarian needs. But continue.
Don't worry, I get the reverse, Organics. I get the reverse. Don't worry, it's I get the.
Well, I'm not here. I'm not here to tell people how to live their lives. I see veganism the same way I see a strong religious belief or a political belief. It's one of the social beliefs that people hold on to, and it can be something divisive. As I mentioned, I set up my channel to try and have, difficult conversations with people and always be respectful, because that's what I really want to promote, is just promote politeness, civility, and respect. And also to understand that we really need differences. I actually value the fact that we have different ideas. I think it's really important to have differences. If everybody agreed on everything, then the world would be very stagnant. We wouldn't make scientific progress, for one thing. I mean, take any scientific discovery that you want to. Let's say if we stopped with Newton and everybody just decided to agree, then Einstein's theory of relativity never would have come to be, right? So we can't agree on everything. Think about art and culture and all these different things. Things evolve over time and they change. And a part of that is pushing back on ideas. So having disagreements about things, having disagreements about veganism, for example, I think is healthy. It's just a matter of, are we able to be respectful of people that we don't agree with? That's really what I try to promote. So when you have these conversations about religion or veganism or politics, a lot of times the people get so emotional because they don't want to have their ideas challenged. It isn't about so much that they even believe whether they're right or wrong anymore. It becomes this defense of their position, take things very personally. Because when you tell someone, let's not talk about veganism because present company, let's just say a religious belief. You tell someone, oh, God can't exist, right? Like the hard atheist will say there is no God, right? Well, the theist, it isn't just that you're saying there's no God, but what you're really ultimately saying without saying it is that everything that they've built their entire life around is completely fabricated or false. And this is a blow to somebody emotionally as well as mentally. So we have to be very careful how we present these things, but also you have to be very
psychological construct. It's part of their psyche at that point, if they're raised religious or it came to them to help them get off drugs or alcohol or whatever. That's why I think.
Just really quickly, I've actually reached out to an author who wrote a book on what's called RTS, which is Religious Trauma Syndrome. And he has agreed to come onto my channel for a discussion. And I've got some great questions I've already lined up to ask him. So really looking forward to that, because I do think this is an important topic to discuss. For all the good things I am willing to say about religions, there is some undeniable harm that does come from religious beliefs. One of them is the RTS. And as a lifelong agnostic, I don't have a deconversion story. So I'm just talking about things that I've heard other people say. And my understanding is that the significant majority of atheists and agnostics used to be religious in one religion or another. And so so many of them carry some type of residual trauma from having left the religion. And it's just like leaving a cult. It's no different in that regard, because your friends are religious, your family members are religious. Sometimes people's jobs are affected. I mean, there are so many parts of your life that get intertwined and interconnected with these religious beliefs and these religious practices, that when a person steps away from that, it can be very traumatic. And this trauma has varying levels and stuff like that. And I don't want to give too much out, because I'm really looking forward to having this author come on, and we'll get into that discussion. But there is a side to this that I think is very real. And I think that religious people, it really bothers me. I might even say it in this video. I can't remember if I do or not. So I'll probably just be repeating myself here, because we're almost done here. I think I've got just a couple minutes left, and then I'm going to shut this one down. And I want to talk about the objective subjective comment that my friend Sajid left here. But it does bother me a lot when I hear religious people talk about atheists and agnostics who have left their, what's the word called, deconverted or deconstructed from the religion, because they say, oh, they were never a true Christian, or they were never a true believer, or they just wanted to sin, or so many of these things. And these are just really disrespectful, first of all. And it gives no credence to the fact that those people left for probably very good reasons, very practical reasons, such as critical thinking, for one thing. They accepted science. They realized that evolution is true. They realized the earth is not actually flat. It's not just 6,000 years old. They realized there was no global flood, for fuck's sakes, right? So they realized that there's no reason that gay people should not be able to get married. If a man and a woman can get married, and we all agree on that, then there's absolutely no reason because of the virtue of fairness, that two men can't get married, two women can't get married, transgender people could anybody should be able to get married, any consenting adults, right? Any two or even more, if four consenting adults want to get into a polygamous relationship, all that is fair. All that should be on the table because of fairness. And so there's a lot of reasons that people leave these religions, and I think they're all justified. I don't think people leave the religion because they want to sin. I don't think they leave the religion because they never really believed. None of that makes any sense. I think, so I don't know. We'll get into that conversation about the religious trauma syndrome, but I just wanted to highlight that real quick here.
Religion can be very good for people in certain ways, for sure. That's for sure. But the people that use it just use it usually to make money in some way or swindle. But continue.
No, you're right, brother. I think that there are harms, which is why I'm willing to have those discussions. Because as I mentioned when I first joined here, I don't try to deconvert people, because I do see there are benefits that people use religious, to certain benefits in society. I mentioned the drugs and alcohol. People overcome trauma. I mentioned that there's the significant majority of nonprofit efforts worldwide are actually done through religious organizations. So you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater as far as that goes. But I do think that it's healthy to embrace what is true to the best of our knowledge. So get rid of the stuff like the anti-science people, the flat earthers, the people who deny evolution, the people who think that there was a global flood and Noah's rickety wooden zoo boat was floating around somewhere. That's just ridiculous. Get rid of that kind of stuff. Stop telling gay people they shouldn't get married. Get rid of the bigotry that comes from religious dogmas. That's the stuff that's harmful. But there can be good things about it, which is why I think we should learn to have respectful conversations.
Common sense is good. 2 thumbs up for common sense. All right, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. Common sense is Chris, good to see you, brother. And common sense is good. It's very valuable, but so is virtue, in my opinion. And again, even though I'm not a religious person, I do really speak out a lot about virtue. I think the virtues are very important, wisdom being the fundamental virtue. If we all would just seek to attain wisdom, I think we would be able to get along a lot better. I don't think that so much of these differences would be such a problem. But yeah, people do use religion as a weapon. The societies and governments use it. In fact, Marx talked about this. So many people have, Voltaire talked about this. The best way to control society is to use religion. The best way to get a bunch of people to do a bunch of terrible shit is use religion. Tell them God told them to do it. That's a really scary thing, in my opinion, that masses can be manipulated so easily with fairy tales, as far as I could tell. They're just myths and fables, and yet you could get masses of people to just kill and torture.
Yeah, and that's the
burn
basis for
people
mass
alive.
mind control, whether it's a government or religion, because then they can sway your opinion about any one given subject because they're force feeding it to you all at once, and they have it and compartmentalized where you're at in your locality to tell you to fix your vote or whatever they're fixing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for groupthink, and when you get out of philosophy and look more into psychology, like if you were in imagine a sports stadium and there was, let's say, 20,000 people collectively in this sporting arena, if less than 10% of those people, let's say 1,000 people, jumped up and started screaming fire and running towards the exits without any evidence of any fire or anything else going on, all 20,000, that fucking place would empty. You know, that whole place would just empty out. Yeah, stampede out. And they'd be running over each other. And it wouldn't matter if there was actually a fire or not. Just all it would take is 1,000 people to control 20,000 people just by freaking out and running towards the door. You know, they could scream anything, which is why there's actually laws, even countries that have
it would
free
probably
speech.
take way less than that. An alarm, a small firecracker, and just 10 or 15 people. You know, who knows? But yeah, the things can get exaggerated. Yeah, so it's like a thing, you know, people grow up and they want to do something wild to rebel. So it's like people do wild things, like, you know, I don't know, I might have known some kids that hit the fire alarm someplace before when they were kids, you know. It's just like people do things to rebel growing up, you know, whether it's smash a bottle or pull a fire alarm or act a loon. It's just always been a thing. We just need more, I think, fields and wilderness for people to do that, outdoor camping, for people to get their yayas out, you know, and then, you know, I think signing aggressive people up for martial arts, get them out there hitting on some pads, you know. I just think there's ways to counterbalance how society is to itself and get us all smoothed out a little better. But that's in the future, like in Star Trek days. Sorry, continue.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think that because I don't believe in free will, I think that the environment plays such a major role in our decision making, quote unquote, decision making processes, that the best thing we could do is try to create a more functional environment so that people become more naturally predisposed to more healthy behaviors, especially healthy social behaviors. But we are a social species. We do tend to, we work together. We need to cooperate as a social animal. But this really diverted from my final question about the metaphysics, and I should get off this and let you guys get to your show. But I was just curious as to, you know, if you believe that you may have reincarnated into other life forms. I'm just curious, when you mentioned the vegan thing and eating the animals and stuff, why is it that you put animal life over plant life, for example? Are plants, you know, possibly, you know, do have some value? You mentioned kissing the trees and stuff like that, but you eat plants. Why is it that the plants can be eaten, but the animals cannot be eaten? Just kind of curious.
Yeah. I never thought of that. So, yeah, kissing plants. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
All right, guys, I'm gonna leave you.
We eat the fruit of the tree. We don't eat the actual tree, but yeah, we end up cutting them down for the wood. But that's how I see it. Is like maybe a person's the tree, but you eat the fruit. That's.
I don't believe plants feel pain, even though there are those who say it. I don't believe that. But yeah, I just find my plants beautiful, so I kiss them.
Well, I'm going to leave you with a positive note. I think plants are beautiful also, and you can give them a hug and a kiss from me too. All right, sister. Thank you so much for letting me crash this. Thank you so much for letting me crash the conversation. You guys, I've very much enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you letting me ask you guys some tough questions about the reincarnation stuff. You've been very gracious to share your thoughts on that. And I did find the conversation fascinating. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure you're talking about Edgar Casey on your channel if that's the subject that interests you.
Edgar Casey, oh yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that was a fascinating conversation. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Please check out the channel Finding Gnosis. I took this clip because I was in it. It's a great conversation. I have a good relationship with the owner of the channel, and I'm using this for educational purposes to share with my community, to encourage people to have polite conversations with people you don't necessarily agree with. I personally don't agree that there is reincarnation. I haven't found good evidence of that. I do think there's some really interesting arguments for it, and I find the concept itself fascinating. I'm not a vegan, you know. So in fact, there's a lot of, I don't know if there's anything as far as a quote unquote worldview these people express that I actually am in line with per se. But as you can see, we had a very respectful conversation. There's been a really respectful conversation in the chat here amongst yourselves. We have religious people in the chat. We have atheists in the chat. You know, so I just appreciate everyone being respectful to each other. And I did want to touch on one comment that Saji had left about subjective and objective. When it comes to the subjective and objective morality question, what I find a lot of times is there's a lot of crosstalk, you know, kind of talking past each other because of definitions and how people really understand these terms. In fact, I had a conversation which I might, excuse me, something I'm recovering from that saliva episode. I almost killed myself with my own saliva. I had an interesting conversation from another video with a Christian. Oh, it actually might have been one of my videos. I think it was. He was responding to one of my videos I had done about objective morality. And it went on. There's like 60, there's more than that. There's almost 100 comments in that thread, which for my small channel is quite a bit of interaction. I was shocked. But a Christian got on to defend the objective moral claim for Christianity. And there is no objective morality in Christianity, nor in Islam or Judaism. The Abrahamic faiths believe in what's called divine command theory. If you want to just get technical about it, because God is a subject by definition, for one thing. But subjective, the definition for subjective is stance dependent. You can also say mind dependent. Sometimes that's easier for people to wrap their minds around or whatever, their heads around, but it really technically is stance dependent. So if you have a will, if you have intention, right, then you have a stance on something. If you have a preference or whatever, you have a stance on something. Well, God clearly has a stance on morality, right? And God clearly has a mind. If I could bring up Bible verses, which I linked in that comment section, there's a number of Bible verses that talk about God's mind and how God's mind works and stuff. So you cannot get around the fact that God has a mind. God clearly has a will. God dictated the 10 commandments, the 613 Mosaic laws, so on and so forth. So this is all about a stance, God's stance, which makes it by definition subjective. Okay, so Christians, Muslims, and Jews do not have objective morality by definition. Objective morality means stance independent. So I am a moral realist, as all of you who follow me know. I believe in objective ethics and objective morality because I believe it's tied to nature, right? It's part of, I make the argument through logic. I believe subjective morality leads to logical contradictions. And because of the laws of logic, in particular the second law of logic, logical contradictions cannot exist. So one or both propositions must be false. An example that I often use because it's so easy and it gets a lot of traction is slavery, but you can literally use this, any moral edict into this example. But the slave owner, he values his own agency, right? He values his own decision-making processes, right? He makes choices, he sets goals, right? And takes action. That's the definition of agency. So he is a moral agent and he values that freedom. He values that well-being. He might be strong enough to take the freedom and well-being away from another person because he's a slave owner. He's got a big army, or he's got a bazooka or something, whatever the fuck he's got, a flamethrower, and he's taken all these slaves. But what he cannot do, to be logically consistent, is to say that slavery is a morally justified action, right? Now in history, we saw that almost every advanced culture at one point engaged in slavery. So the subjective moralist and the moral anti-realist will say, well, morality is subjective because they believed it was moral. It was good to take slaves. In fact, when you look at the North Atlantic slave trade, they actually used a moral claim to justify slavery. They said it was good to take the African Americans as slaves because they were exposing them to Christianity, right? So it was morally justified. And unfortunately, that's a logical contradiction because they themselves value their own freedom and well-being. So it cannot be morally justified. They've already shown by their actions as agents that they need their freedom and well-being to take slaves. They cannot say it's morally justified to do something to somebody they would not want done to themselves, because then they would turn around and say, well, it's not morally justified to make me a slave. You've got a logical contradiction, an internal logical contradiction, okay? And that is the problem with subjective morality. And again, you can use theft, murder, sexual crimes against people, right? Any moral edict, any moral proposition you can use to fit this example, right? which is why Kant believed in the categorical imperative, right? And one of the things he said is that all your actions, your moral decisions should be such that you would want that to be a universal law, right? So the thief, he goes to rob a bank, right? But he doesn't want his money to be robbed. So his action, he doesn't really want that action to become a universal law. He wants other people to not steal from him or not steal from people he cares about, but he wants to steal from other people, right? Kant says, no, all our decisions need to be done as if they were universal laws. So we don't steal because we don't want anybody stealing from us, which means we don't want anybody stealing from anybody, which means I don't steal from other people. And so this is kind of part of the argument for the objective standard. I will close by saying that I do have a debate coming up against Mark Reed. I think a lot of you guys are aware of that. After my last debate against Tom, an atheist friend of mine, we debated this very topic, actually, objective morality versus subjective morality. And that was on the 21st Century Minds channel. Please do check out Tristan's channel. Check out that debate. I will be doing some reviews and some videos on my previous debates. I've had about 4 or 5 debates now on morality issues. And I performed very well. I'm very pleased with the way I performed in those debates, but I am not on a Mark Reed level. He is an extremely good debater. He's very experienced. He's got way more than 4 or 5 debates under his belt. And so it's going to be a challenge for me. He's a really smart guy. He reached out to me to see if I would debate him. I'm not into turning down challenges, so I agreed to do it. But I tell you, I'm a realist, and he's going to be a tough challenge. We are supposed to do that on the Raging Tomato site. So as soon as I get a final date, it's supposed to happen sometime mid-January. I told Mark that I just need to get through the holidays because it's just such a busy time of year for everybody, I'm sure. So please do keep posted to the channel for that. But I do agree with what he said, what Saji said about the crossover in language. You know, a lot of times when people mean subjective and objective, they're not using the technical definition, the dictionary definition of what these terms mean. And their ideas are actually more in common than they are apart. They're just using different vernacular to get to these conclusions. So, you know, I think there's a lot more commonality because a lot of the subjective anti-realists, right? The moral anti-realists that I talk to, and the moral relativists, these guys that believe in subjective morality, a lot of these guys that I talk to actually agree that there are certain things that we could say are objective. Like when it comes to the big issues like murder, they might agree that, yeah, murder is objectively wrong, but still they say that we could come up with our own subjective morality. And I'm not sure, honestly, how that works because to me, it's an either or situation, again, because of the laws of logic. I don't think morality can be both objective and subjective. We can have preferences, we can have ideas, we can create laws all subjectively, no problem. But when it comes to a moral proposition, a declarative moral proposition, it needs to either be true or false. That's just, I see morality as a declarative proposition, and therefore, according to the laws of logic, because of the law of non-contradiction, it is either one or the other. So at any rate, I just want to thank everybody for jumping in. Check out the Finding Gnosis channel. I've linked the channel in the description of this video. I mistakenly typed in digital gnosis, thinking of another friend of mine or another gentleman. I shouldn't say friend. He's been very kind to me. I haven't really interacted with a lot, but digital gnosis, he seems like a smart guy. And I do like his stuff, so I'll hopefully interact more with him. But this is Finding Gnosis channel. DNW is the owner of the channel. He's been very gracious to let me join some of his live panels. And I don't know if there's anything else other than to thank you all for interacting with the video. I will be doing a Saturday show with Deconverted Man. We will be discussing logic and the logical fallacies that are involved in 3 of the primary arguments, the philosophical arguments that get used for God's existence, the Kalam cosmological argument, the watchmaker argument, which is intentional design, and then, of course, tag, which is the transcendental argument for God. So those are 3 big ones that get used in philosophy and with religious apologists. And Deconverted Man and I are going to go over those arguments specifically. So please do tune in Saturday. Other than that, treat your body like a temple, not an amusement park, and have a great day. Thank you so much for checking it out today.